Yeah, interesting. If you had to give any advice to patriots to do three things that can help expedite what we're in right now, what would one or two of those three things be?
You know, that's an interesting question. I talked a little bit about that on file 37. The very best thing patriots can do is start listening to their inner spirit, their inner guidance. We have an intuition for a reason. We have a GPS system that sort of tells us what we need to be doing in any day and time. It's not going to come in the form of voices. It's not going to come in, or well, not normally in very vivid pictures in the mind. It's usually a feeling and an intuition. We need to learn to explore that better. We can't move forward into the new earth until we have a clear understanding of how we prevent corruption from ever occurring again. That only happens when we understand our compass that we have.
Mhm.
Outside of that, getting involved in your local community to the best extent possible is what I would encourage you to do. I'm involved in a small way with the organization that determines some of the rules with my son's preschool, for example. It's not a powerful position in the community. It does not require a tremendous amount of my time, approximately 2 hours to 4 hours a month, depending on what's on the agenda. Once monthly meetings, things like this nature. Follow what you're called to do, but get involved and take some action. We're being
Mhm.
given our world back. This is the opportunity, the training period, the boot camp, so that we can learn how to rule it. We're being given our communities back. We need to understand how to rule them. We need to know what the electoral process in our local area looks like. Are the mayors appointed by popular vote? Are the mayors appointed by electors? Things of this nature. We
Mhm.
think about it at the federal level because, of course, we're taught so much about the federal level. And the reason why in our education system is so we won't learn and focus and attempt to educate ourselves about the local level, which is where our power is. That's
Mhm.
going to change.
Yeah. Your boy Derek Johnson. I see you guys are like two peas in a pod. I know you're both military and you both give very incredible answers, and I think your answers have got a lot to do with your military training. I know he's been invited down to go to Mar-a-Lago and took pictures with 45. Have you been so lucky to be invited down there yet?
I have not, but if fate has that in store, I will certainly not turn it away.
Perfect. And this final jujitsu move that 107 talks about, even though he doesn't describe it, if you had to describe it, what do you think that final jujitsu move really looks like, if you had to guess?
Controlled chaos, a controlled demolition situation. Um, we have things that are going to pop off militarily and some kinetic effects in Europe because we still have operations that have to finish there. We have
Mhm.
ties between the Baltic states and the corruption in Ukraine that Russia and Belarus are simply not going to ignore. There's a tremendous amount of tunnel systems up there. The northernmost of the Baltic states, of course, having access to underground submarine capability and exiting out into the Baltic Sea. So as we go through the last arm, dropping of the last the last arm of the Empire of the Three Cities, I think that we're going to see a controlled crash situation going on. Not necessarily financial, although I think that's part of it, but I think it's going to be a whole of society and ordeal. I think
Sure.
that we're being prepared and shown that the way that we're living in the world today in 2023 is no longer sustainable long term for the human race. We've got lots of indications, pointing us in that direction, not the least of which being the COVID crime. But we're learning as a people, as one mankind, that this can't be the way it is. It has to get better and it has to improve.
Yeah, absolutely. These documents that have been found with the President Biden, supposedly, do you think that this will be his downfall, the reason of his demise?
Um, my umbrella answer to that is going to be yes, but I think we're going to see much more specific criminality come to pass, or excuse me, come to light that has gone on with the Biden crime family over the last 10 years.
Mhm.
Um, how this comes about removing him is anybody's guess. We're seeing that set up now. The mainstream media has actually turned on this individual at this point. That tells me that he's unsalvageable even by their own metrics.
So even the mainstream media and potentially a lot of the Democrats I hear also are lining up against him as well.
Correct. It's sort of like being on a sinking ship and realizing that it's not going to come back up. You want to be the first to get yourself separated and distanced from it, especially politically. That these people understand how to control perception, which is a very important faculty of how they've maintained this narrative control over our lifetimes.
Mhm.
but yes, reading between the lines, we're seeing a situation being set up where this individual is going to he's not going to make it 4 years, folks. It's not going to happen. How much longer we live the parade show is anybody's guess. But he's being set up now for removal.
Interesting. You know, about a year and a month ago, about 13 months ago or so, when I started this podcast, SGN, I said that in order for you to wake up the normies, you're going to have to get the gasoline to about, $14, $15, and you have to get the eggs about the same price. Somebody sent me a message this morning inside my Telegram group, said, you're not going to believe this, Mel, but in some parts of Manhattan today, the eggs, a dozen eggs hit $18, $18 for a box of eggs. We're literally at the precipice, I think, where we've reached a point where I think the straw will break the camel's back, because I don't think there's a lot of people out there that want to pay $18 for a box of eggs, including myself. What do you make of this? I mean, is this craziness?
Well, it is. It is craziness, but but it's real world, right? We have to devalue the dollar. Mm-hmm. What happens when you devalue one side of a seesaw? The other side must increase. It's sort of simple math, right? And so we have a situation where, as we drain more and more of the value out of the deep state coffer system, the old financial way of life, our commodities, our point of sale transactions that are still contained in the matrix of that way of life are going to respond accordingly. I expect things to unfortunately get more unpleasant in that space before they get better. We've seen an 80 cents per gallon hike in price in my area just over the last 7 days, and it does not look to be letting up. And as Russia continues and actually renews its offensive in Ukraine to a much larger level, we're going to see geopolitical logistics and supply chains collapsing. That has to happen. We know that a bunch of involved in many of these chains, other than the dark money, is child sex trafficking. We have to go and stop everything so that we can take an evaluation of where we're at. There have been special operations conducted in no less than 27 different ports of call all throughout the world over the last 5 years, but primarily under covert guises so that they could take out as much as possible without tipping the enemy off. Eventually, we're going to have an overt situation, and the deep state, as well as we, the people, the military part in all of this, it's all going to be on display very soon.
Gotcha. How much more inflation do you think the average American or the average person anywhere on this planet can possibly handle before everybody's going to go bunkers? Seriously.
I think we're approaching the bonkers point. How much more inflation, kind of a loaded question. How much heat can the frog take before it realizes it has to jump out of the pot? People have been very patient, and I have to commend, the United States citizens out there. Absolutely, we are one of the most heavily brainwashed civilizations in the world. Yeah. And so our patience and, our resolute resolve as patriots and Americans, I really have to commend everyone. It's really a wonderful thing. But I do think we see a point this year where patience is going to run out for a great deal of people, because they will be faced with the actuality of not being able to pay one of these three things: their housing costs, their fuel costs, or their food costs. When one of those has to go off the table, society collapses. I think we're seeing a buildup, if you will, in the narrative space towards that. Very much over the last couple of years, if you go back and look historically, it's very much similar to 1926 and then into late 1928. Same sorts of situations going on. And a lot of the same entities, really, even though they're different names now, a lot of the same entities in the public space responsible for similar things. So, you asked me how much more inflation. I really couldn't tell you, Mel, but I don't foresee that it's going to be, as some people put out, 3 to 5 more years. I don't see that happening.
No, I don't. Look, things really have gone off the deep end. The car has gone off the cliff. Now it's a matter of how big is the parachute, how much, can we soften the crash landing, if you will. In regards to 2024,